But yeah, so, this lecture is about the Kamikaze DJ World Cup battle. And if you look at the flyer, once again, there's like in the famous Spike Lee movie, what was it, the one with the pizza shop, what was that called? The one with the where the pizza shop burned down, Do the Right Thing. Yeah, just like in Do the Right Thing, there's a scene where the guy's like, hey, how come ain't no brothers on the wall? How come ain't no brothers on the wall? And then, the shop patron was like, hey, this is an Italian eatery. Why should there be, I don't need to put James Brown on the wall. I'm putting Frank Sinatra in my heroes, which I can understand that, you know what I'm saying? But in this context, with the DJ Kamikaze, the Kamikaze DJ World Cup battle, it's interesting because there's no black people, DJs, there's no black turntablists that were asked to be judges. Now, there was only Asian and one Caucasian DJ. Now, they did add one woman, which is great. It's very, very great for gender relations as far as turntablism, because usually people never ask women to judge, and I think that's dope. They got DJ Reiko, But, yeah, so basically, the battle is, I believe it's Shortcut, Qbert, DJ Shin, DJ Angelo, right? We know DJ Angelo out of the UK, right? And then I believe Richie Roughtone and DJ Reiko and DJ Yoshi. Yoshi's really sick. Yoshi's very, very sick. And Reiko's very sick. You can catch some of her routines with her and her daughter. But what's interesting is that this is a scratch battle. This is actually a scratch battle. And, Reiko's more of a juggle DJ. She's really, really sick. She's one of my favorite juggle DJs. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. So yeah, they never asked any black DJs to be a judge. Now, I understand if it was like if you're throwing a local battle in the Philippines, then obviously if you're doing something in a city in the Philippines, if you're like, oh, you're in Manila, and of course, the judges might, if it was a physical battle, then yeah, the judges might reflect the population of the place that it is. Same thing if you're in the UK. If you're in UK and you're doing a battle at a pub, then it's like, yeah, it might reflect, the judges might be, the local picks from near the area, people that can make it, and it might not end up being diverse just because of the location, because of the ethnic location. But when it's an international battle and you're choosing judges that are just online people that you inbox, like, hey, you want to be a judge? Then that's where we can see the, disparities. You know what I'm saying? We can see, the latent racism in what's going on, right? Because, if you look at all the sponsors, all the sponsors are pretty much Euro and Asian companies. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like it's kind of a cronyism monopoly where, and there's no Arab people in there either. You know what I'm saying? You don't see Indian DJs. I don't see people asking Tiger Style. Tiger Style is one of my favorite turntablists. I don't ever see people asking Tiger Style to DJ a battle. Tiger Style is one of the illest scratchers there is. You know what I'm saying? Especially as far as scratching to melodic scratching, or not melodic scratching, more thematic scratching, like lyrical scratching. You know what I'm saying? Scratching, to the in a lyrical way. You know what I'm saying? Where if you just listen to the scratches itself, you would have an understanding of how the song sounds. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so Tiger Style's one of those. But yeah, you don't see him on there. It's only Asian DJs. And one Caucasian DJ, Richie Roughtone, who has a lot of pull, financially. Same with Qbert, as far as battle records, cats are making, millions to hundreds of thousands, you know what I'm saying? And so what happens is, if everything is free market and there's no, like free market open source, and there's no respect for black culture, then you know, that's what happens is, like, you know, people get pushed out, and it's cronyism. It's about making that money and trying to impress an echo chamber, basically, an echo chamber of people trying to impress each other. They're like, hey, well, if we ask a black judge, you know what I'm saying, to judge the battle, you know, people might not attend to it, you know. And what's interesting is that when I did my TTM World Cup battle, you know, only a handful of people actually applied to it, even though it was a $500 prize. That's why I did that video like a year, 2 years back, about why turntablists don't even want money. They don't even want money anymore. You know what I'm saying? They just want an echo chamber of, like, hey, I want that particular crowd, you know, those scratch nerds people, or those, you know, particular groups to accept me, you know. But meanwhile, you know, everybody's kind of silent on the race issue, so they're like, hey, you know, they're acting like I'm the only one agitating things, but it's like, I'm just talking about the disparities. I'm just looking at this from a statistical approach, you know. So statistically, there's 0% black DJs on the cover of this flyer, and turntablism is a black art form. You know, do I have to go back and say, you know, Grand Wizard Theodore invented the scratch? He invented scratching. You know what I'm saying? You know, disco DJs weren't scratching. You know what I'm saying? Nobody was scratching. He invented it, right? And it's also a youth thing too. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, the first hip hop parties, you know, Disco King Mario, you know, also a black man. You know, his parents were from the South. You know, and his brother was also a DJ. You know what I'm saying? And they brought, you know, the elements that created hip hop. They started hip hop. Disco King Mario was, you know, the first hip hop DJ. You know, they had, you know, B-boy Baby Spades, youth gang members, you know, mixing James Brown and Bruce Lee together. You know what I'm saying? They were all Bruce Lee fans. They were all James Brown fans. There were no Caribbean vibes at the beginning of hip hop. There was no Caribbeans there. There's mad Caribbeans in New York, you know, Queens, a lot of different places, but, you know, when you go to Harlem at that specific time in Bronxdale projects, you know, there was Caribbean people there, but they came, you know, a couple years later. You know, Bambaataa and Herc and all of them found out all about it later. You know what I'm saying? You know, that was the second generation. You know, so, you know, then you take even Grandmaster Flash. You know what I'm saying? Grandmaster Flash, you know, inventing backspin. You know what I'm saying? Steve D inventing juggling. You know, so everything that everybody's still doing, they're just repeating everything that black DJs have done, but they're not inviting black DJs to even judge. Like, why not have Steve D as a judge? You know, Christy Z does it, so shout out to Christy Z, because she keeps it real. She has black judges. You know what I'm saying? Christy Z is actually, staying true to the essence. You know what I'm saying? She's staying true to, and I hate to say just the essence, because that sounds kind of wanky and esoteric. I mean, she's staying true to history and the culture. You know, like for instance, I was just telling my homie Nick Diablo. You know, shout out Nick Diablo in Scratch, New Jersey. I was like, you know, imagine a Italian-American festival with no Italians. You know, imagine I go, oh, we got pierogies and, you know, we got all this stuff. And yeah, I don't know any Italian people, you know, but whoever threw this battle, the Kamikaze DJ World Cup, you know, there's tons of black turntablists all around the world that they could have asked. And if you're going to say, well, oh, black DJs don't win battles, da-da-da. It's like, nah, that's fake, man. They could have asked Eric J. I'm sure Eric J would have done it. They could have asked an old school's cat. You know what I'm saying? They could have asked Lord Jazz. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Lord Jazz, hit me one time, make it funky. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm sure Lord Jazz might be like, yeah, that's hot.
Lord Jazz, hit me one time, make it funky.
Lord Jazz, the name, so watch me scratch it in your brain.
You know? It's like, you know, they won't invite us. So, you know, in the context of if it's a local event, yeah, it makes sense if it's, you know, not ethnically diverse, but, or not just ethnically diverse, but also representational as far as the, you know, founders of the art form. You know, a lot of people feel like, oh, well, you know, black people were doing this stuff, and then eventually, you know, people came along and, you know, advanced everything to higher levels. But in my opinion, if you, like, I haven't seen people really invent any new styles since like Kintaro. And that was like 2002 or 2001. You know, shout out to Kintaro, he's sick. Also one of my favorite jugglers. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was doing some stuff with some house records and some different styles. Because, you know, most people when they're juggling, they're just trying to break down a hip hop beat and turn it into another hip hop beat. And a lot of time that gets boring. That's why everything is stagnated now. You know, the past 20 years has been pretty stagnant as far as new techniques and things like that. And but within scratching, we've seen a lot of new techniques. You know what I'm saying? We've seen a lot. So, you know, and once again, you know, I've created more techniques myself on paper than anybody in the game. You know, thousands and thousands of techniques, you know what I'm saying, that have never been done before, including transcribing the history of what's been done before, right? So, you know, it's just kind of a persistent thing. So I just decided I'm going to start calling it like I see it. Every time I see, you know, a billing that's a black cultural institution, because turntablism is a black art form. You know, because people try to be like, oh yeah, hip-hop DJing is black, but, you know, turntablism is kind of like some nerd stuff. So, you know, it's you know, some nerd stuff, and, you know, the new school, you know, kids in Asia might not even know about the past, but, you know, it's just, you know, very, you know, troubling to me. It's very, very troubling to see a flyer like that, to see a billing of, you know, a black cultural institution that has nobody ever sent somebody an email. Maybe they did, but they could have tried a little bit harder. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes, you know, a cat from the 90s might not reply quick, but they could have hollered at John Swan, right? They could have hired at, you know, Damian Tompkins, you know what I'm saying? You know, Boogie Blind. You know what I'm saying? There's so many turntablists out there, black turntablists. You know what I'm saying? And scratchers, because they could be like, oh, well, there's not that many black scratch DJs. Yeah, black scratch DJs like to do juggling more, which is true. Over the years, you know, we've gravitated towards juggling more. You know, I haven't been juggling for, you know, since I lost DMC in 2002. You know, I was killing it. I was doing some next level stuff, and it just went over everybody's head. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm out. You know, and I stopped juggling back then. I'm gonna start juggling up again, but, you know, it's gonna be a bunch of video juggling I'm gonna start dropping later this year. You know, with my Pioneer, my old school setup, my Pioneer DVD turntable setup that I got for like, you know, maybe 80-90% off. You know, because they used to be like 3 G's for a deck, you know, and the mixer was like 8 G's, you know, but I got the mixer for like $800 at a pawn shop, and then I got the 2 mixers for like maybe $400 each at a Guitar Center on discount years later. Because when they first came out, I was like, oh man, I want those, but I'm not trying to pay $3,000. You know, I already had the regular CDJs. You know, I had dropped like a G on it, you know, on each, you know. But yeah, when those things came out, I was just like, okay, whatever, you know, I'm not buying it. But then, you know, eventually, you know, the price drop. But, you know, the thing is that all these companies are also European and Japanese companies. So the corporations are pushing a paradigm that is very, very similar, as I've spoken to my students in the past, about a book called The Bell Curve. And if y'all don't know about this book called The Bell Curve, you should definitely check it out, because it, you know, highly relates to what I'm talking about. This book, The Bell Curve, was written, and it was basically, you know, talking about statistics and IQs, and it was trying to say that, you know, basically kind of eugenics, kind of, you know, brown shirt kind of Germany, World War II kind of stuff. It was trying to purport the idea that Caucasians and Asians were smarter than everybody else. And there was a big controversy when the book came out because they were using SAT scores, or I'm pretty sure it was just on American, it was like in a American classrooms or whatever. I don't think it was an international statistical study that they did. You know what I'm saying? But, a lot of conservatives and alt-right people have been pushing that book for years. But, in turntablism, we've had clearly a big alt-right problem. That's why if you go to look up Vect on Facebook, or look up Vect on Facebook, his Facebook is, he turned it off because he knew a lot of his fans were alt-right and they were popping off, and he was getting off in the middle of all that. And so he just kind of shut it down because he didn't want to, be associated with all that. He knew that he was getting shut down on as far as, the racist stuff being, bubbling up. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so it's just like I just see this stuff every day, and it's like, when's it gonna change? When are we gonna have black gear companies? You know what I'm saying? When are we gonna have that? And people say like, hey, if you be the change that you want to see. So yeah, I'm on that path. You know what I'm saying? But I'm taking a different approach, taking a much slower approach, kind of how China does with their public relations. I mean, not their public relations, their foreign policy and the stuff. They're thinking about 20 years in the future, 50, 100 years in the future. They're not necessarily just thinking about 2 years in the future. So for me, it's always about legacy and long-term and stuff like that, long-term growth. Most all this TTM work that I've done over the past 22 years has been from my heart, and shout out to, all the Matrix poster supporters, and a lot of those people in the flyer are students of my work once again, just, and it's also DJ Reyna too. Shout out to DJ Reyna. These are all TTM students. All these people are familiar with my work. My work has helped them advance to higher levels. What's up, man? What's up, Tiger? Yeah, what's up, man? All right, but yeah, so it's just really, really sad and troubling to see this flyer. I'm just like shocked. I'm like, it's like, yo, I know there's so many black turntablists, and even women too. DJ Emmy out of France. She's sick. You know what I'm saying? She gets big club gigs, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? There's just so many. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think that, what really needs to happen is, we need to really start looking at festival flyers, like, say you see a Coachella flyer or whatever like that, and really start thinking about the ethnic dynamics of these flyers, these billings, because usually if there are black people on it, they're using us as cash cows to kind of diffuse our value into newer Euro artists or Asian artists, but usually European. Now if you go over to China and you check, they've got a pyramid out online. I'll show a picture of it. It's called the Chinese, you type Chinese racial pyramid. You can also type Korean racial pyramid, and it'll show the structures in the society, how racism is a normal part of the society, where they believe that, they're kind of, in China, the CCP, I'm not talking about the Chinese people, I'm talking about the CCP is pushing Chinese supremacy. They put themselves at the top, then they put Caucasian Westerners, and then it goes down from there, everybody else. So then it's like Japanese and Koreans after Caucasians, on the chart, so. And then you go to Japan, I believe this battle might be out of Japan, and I spoke about in the past about how when they had the symphony in Japan with all the DJs, the Technics turntablist symphony, they didn't invite any black people either. They had DJ Swamp, might have been the only Caucasian guy, just like how Richie Roughton is the only, Caucasian guy in this bill, and in China they call that, they do that. They do the same thing. Like, they'll have an advertisement and they'll throw like one Caucasian guy in there.
老板，这个多少钱？这个18万7，这也来不了，太贵了。喜欢可以讲个价，我要的听你讲的，对吧？买卖嘛。那我要要的话，怕你打我呀。没事，小伙子放心大胆的讲价。20卖。
You know what I'm saying? Kind of like in America, where we've got pressure to to have equality, and we might throw one black person in the AT&T ad or something like that. But yeah, it's just really, really deep to that it's like, what's happening with Steve D? Nobody's, what I'm saying? It's like nobody's asking Steve D. It's like all these pioneers, and it doesn't even have to be a pioneer, you know what I'm saying? But it's clearly, if you look at all the companies at the bottom of the flyer, there's a financial relationship to this, to sponsors and maintaining European and Asian software and mixer company dominance, and that's called cronyism. And then when you add race into cronyism, it actually takes it to a whole nother level, and that becomes racism. That comes systematic, structural, institutional racism. And turntablism is having a big problem with that. That's why Rain Mixers try to steal my work, and I sue them, and they had to settle with me because they know they were stealing my work. You know what I'm saying? As black artists, we gotta protect ourselves and also not worry about being being excommunicated from the industry, because that's why a lot of people are silent. Like people were silent about the beef between Qbert and DJ Craze over Qbert saying that the All Lives Matter stuff, and him dissing George Floyd, and pushing Candace Owens and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And then trying to act like he never heard of All Lives Matter. He just came up with that in his head. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I just, made a post to Qbert recently like, hey, Q, we need to talk, because your fans are still harassing me. Qbert fans have been harassing me for 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Ever since I talked about what happened between him and Craze. You know what I'm saying? You see, they're not asking Craze to be on these things. Boiler Room is hooking Craze up, and, Craze is, Miami homies are hooking him up, but you don't see that happening. You don't see him getting a lot of gigs. You don't see him getting. Remember that Craze had this whole big tour that got canceled once. You know what I'm saying? This was before the pandemic, right? But yeah, so that stuff is just troubling. I see these flyers, very, very troubling, and it's the same thing over and over again. Last time it was like 37 DJs and only 2 black DJs were chosen to be judges. Now this time there's like 8 DJs and no black DJs are chosen. So it just shows that they view us as not economically viable, not musically viable, not, they're just looking at us as not viable. And that's kind of a robotic, kind of inhumane approach to culture. Because if it's culture, if I'm throwing a tabla festival, it's different if I'm throwing a tabla festival in Siberia, you know what I'm saying? Then, yeah, it might just be Siberian judges if it's a local thing. But if I'm throwing an international tabla festival online, and I have the choice of hollering at whoever I want around the world as far as judges, it would look kind of shady if I had no Indian judges and I only had tabla producers, European tabla producers, and maybe that were selling tablas, or something like that. You'd be like, hey, why weren't any Indian people invited? So it's a similar thing. Nick Diablo was actually telling me he just went to a German festival or something where I think he said he didn't see any Germans, or no Germans were invited or something like that. But that's not the norm. In turntablism, that's the norm. We're never invited, we're getting boxed out. So I'm just spreading awareness of all that. So peace.
せいさそうさあやってきましたなんつったってあさっての方向を見てる僕には君の声は届かない朝から晩まで頭で考えたって追いつかへんよ栄養吸収するだし面々場面場面場面場面場面手間暇かけたって書いあってスースーどんなもんでも何から何まであっという間に描いた絵は時とともに枯れ果てた解体作業常に怠らず必ずトンネル抜け出た浴びる太陽消耗品さ人間なんて使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん使わなそん今宵夢に見る七色の虹祈り空へ空へ高鳴るリズムはいつしか行動と重なり Fly away yeah 今宵夢に見る七色の虹に乗り空へ空へ高鳴るリズムはいつしか行動と重なり Fly away fly away yo lay down Gebo 走り出したら止まらないつまらない言葉すぐさま封印入院する病院いずれは退院足にも帽子も引っかからんならどうやいかなせなどないかせな全て捨てなどないかせな全て捨てな全て捨てな全て捨てな汗ににじむ逃げるマイクないから命綱しっかり引きずりますますかわすかわすあらゆる攻撃と防御ひっくり返して大して変わらん同じ人間血と汗の涙の結晶それで顔色膝使えずしけな殺生怖いなんだ島国飛び出し感じるむき出しのままの自分を吐き出し異国情緒あんまりなしされどレイドン叩く鍵盤黒と白皆同じ目白黒させ続き色い壁と向かい合い紡ぎ出す音色の識別不可能様々な煩悩ねじり合い時にカラフル時にどんより曇り積もる灰色のキャンディー見た目で判断したらあかんで舐めたらあかんかなりビビかなりビビった様子隠さずまとわりつく服脱がされ石まとわぬ今まさに包まれた手の姿 I feel you You feel me I feel me You feel me I feel you You feel me I feel me You feel you 高らかに流れ出す船よ歌い続けてよ Mr. Sendo高らかに流れ出す船よ歌い続けてよ Mr. Sendo タラリタラリタラリポタリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリタラリタラリタラリタラリポタリ儚すぎる人生そうカットすんな自分の行く末真っ暗闇なら灯せ頭はったかったら急げ歯医者会社勤めのサラリーマンごくごさんだけどこの星の明日になるのはあんたらだけではありませんから足からずまからずままずからずしかし必ずノータメンな1時間のビタミン GEBO ドアをナックするところから始まりご対面初対面ビートに手と首ケツフリフリ無理なく脳に身をスリスリぐっちゃねぐっちゃね生活からばらまくたね適度な高校生で方向性見失う小学生中学生高校生大学生院生専門学校生その他大勢フリに来てる俺ライターいわばフリーヒッタースケーターラフティライターブレイカーターンテーブルリスターサイター巻いた種からニョキニョキ出てきた新芽がいきなり大木序列序列序列真っ赤な可愛い花が咲いた真っ赤な可愛い花が咲いた真っ赤な可愛い花が咲いた真っ赤な真っ赤な下になれば下の風が吹くつったってついたまま離さず降りしきる雨びしょ濡れになってびしょ濡れになってびしょ濡れになって浸透しすぎて脳震盪重なる振動ピントひらめいたかすかなヒントヒント頭に刺激的に生きてきた知る一滴残らずガムのみ未消化消化お構いなくインカ常に心と体が価値大事至る寸前キャッチランチ食い続けるもの思い出感知外の前